have the #1 heart surgeries in the country, but that's not true anymore. And then about every 3 minutes a surgery starts. So a little bit about our curriculum. So you guys have this in your handout, and I'm going to talk about some of the different areas, some highlights. A lot of schools have gone through a curriculum reform. We are about 3 years into ours, so while we say it's new, it's really not new anymore. We're kind of working out the kinks, and now our students are really able to talk about what they like and what they don't like, as well as just kind of passing down the information from year to year. So Foundations covers the content from the 12 to 13 traditional disciplines, and it's a pass-fail. That's for all foundations, right? And the reason we do that is because our students are coming in at different academic levels, they're coming from different universities, and it's a lot to take in all at once. Can you guys tell me a little bit about maybe the analogy of what it is like for the curriculum?
Drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
It's the same one. You'll hear it a lot.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah. Drinking from a fire hydrant or fire hose.
Yeah, so in undergraduates, like, you're taking a drink of water from a fountain, but in medical school, getting all the information is like being sprayed with a fire hose. And these guys can talk a little bit more about it if you have questions. And then doctoring, you have the opportunity to start working with patients, doctoring one your first semester. So we like to prepare our students, getting them into patient rooms right away and having that interaction so you can really build on those skills. And then also with doctoring, to learn to take the patient history and do a full examination. And then in the spring, which is what our students are doing now, our first year students, they're doing system-based courses where it's a big shift from covering lots of different topics to focusing on one topic at a time. So I think right now you guys are in renal.
Yeah, we just started.
Yeah, and then they'll be tested on that area as opposed to foundations where it's big blocks of different things. And then a preceptor is, you're assigned to a preceptor and you'll follow them around once every 2 weeks.
Just about, yeah.
Yep, and you'll follow that person through, and then who was your preceptor's assignment?
So I'm with Dr. Catano. He's an anesthesiologist.
I was with Dr. Sargason in pulmonology and sleep medicine.
So again, one of the features of our curriculum is that we want to have you exposed to patient interaction as soon as possible, and then you'll begin to develop rapport with a preceptorship, getting into the room and learning a little bit more about the mechanics of how everything works. All right, so then in the second year of medical school, you'll focus more on other specific systems, and it's again similar to how your second semester is of your first year, and then the doctoring 3 will follow along that in the curriculum here. And then for the MS3 year, more systems-based, the MS2 year, you have 7 weeks of dedicated step 1 prep time. How many of you have heard of step 1 or know what that is? Okay, so a lot of students begin to start freaking out about it the moment that they hit medical school. So step 1 really is a huge test that determines what kind of competitive residency programs you can go into. So what do you guys know about STEP, or what have you heard?
It's not only the #1 starting factor, whether or not you get rotations in your specific field. So if you want to do a specialty, it's highly competitive. You're going to get chosen over other people if you have a really good step 1 score. It's also currently, like, the last survey that I saw, it was like, for programs for residencies, 95% of them said the step 1 score is the most important score that there is.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to look at a number of different factors, but I would agree with you that the step preparation time is incredibly important, which is why we've built this in. as well as, you know, if you are hoping to get into plastic surgery or, you know, ENT, which is a really highly competitive residency program, you're gonna need to have the scores that match that. Okay. All right, so then in your MS3 year, you have all of your required clerkships and your rotations, and you know, you'll have an idea of kind of maybe what you want to do. We certainly encourage students to keep an open mind about what they want to go into, but some of that will be determined off of the STEP score. And then during your MS4 year, that's really when you can customize your career, your residency. You know, if you are a competitive student, you can do away rotations, you can do certain research projects, and it just allows you more options to do any of the career-focused tracks, which are also listed in that brochure. All right, so a couple of highlights about our support systems. One of the factors that I encourage you to think about when you are applying to medical school, or maybe when you go on interviews, is, you know, how are you going to be supported? How are you going to find help? A lot of our students, they come in straight out of undergrad, they're young, they haven't really had a lot of challenges, major hiccups, and this is just speaking for, you know, a lot of our students that come in, maybe not so much of the non-traditional students, but these areas, you know, help us support you in the best way. So we have our MS2 buddies. So once you're admitted into medical school, you'll be assigned a buddy. You'll fill out an application, and I think it has questions about like, what kind of TV do you like to watch? Where did you grow up? You know, what are you looking for out of a buddy? And the buddy system is just your go-to person when you first come into medical school. I'm not sure if you guys have, but do you utilize your buddy at all, or did you?
Yeah, kind of. Actually, I had like a few other MS2 friends that I became better friends with, but like they gave me so much life advice. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I've met with my MS2 buddy, like, occasionally just as a check-in, and like, she'll give me like advice and tips on studying. I think it was especially helpful during the first semester, just trying to get used to things.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a good launch pad, and just based off of some of the interactions that I've had with students, they may say, you know, when they're freaking out right before the first exam, how did you study for this? How did you prepare? What resources did they use? Or it could even be anything like, you know, what study spots did you study at? There tend to be some pretty lucrative spots that people don't like to share. We also have what's called McGovern societies. So about once a month, our students meet with a McGovern Society leader. That's a clinical faculty member, and then also a PhD faculty member. It's in a small group. I think there's 12 to 13 students. So if you've interviewed with that faculty member, you'll be assigned to that faculty member. And they talk about different things, like what do I do with my summers, handling the transition from foundations to certain block schedules, stress and wellness, career advising. What's something that you guys have talked about recently in your McGovern societies?
Probably summer plans.
Summer plans, research, other opportunities even outside of research, such as volunteering.
Yeah. So the Texas Medical Center, it's the largest in the world, right? And I like to think of it as a huge web. And this is just one of the ways that we can help connect our students to other faculty members or research opportunities. Chances are, if your faculty member doesn't know, they'll know someone else and how to put you in touch with them. So we also have a strong wellness and resilience program. What that is, we bring in pet therapy, we do exercise classes, they offer talks on, you know, finding your passion and what your drive is, and really, you know, what your why is if you're serving as a doctor. What other things? They do a lot of food preparation too, so it's not just about, you know, how can you handle medical school, but it's also about, you know, thriving in medical school, because you can get, I'm gonna be honest, you can get really beat down in medical school. And this is a long career choice, so we really want to prepare you now to deal with those hiccups and, things that there are outside stressors before you get into residency. You're still struggling with those. Anything about wellness and resilience that you guys can add?
You would know, you're in charge of it.
Yeah, I'm actually on the student wellness and resilience committee. So we've done a lot of stuff. We had a meditation session along with the pet therapy. There was someone who came in to talk about meal prep. So educating, so just making best use of your time and taking care of yourself.
I think we have an official March Madness bracket.
Yeah.
That's really fancy football, if you're into that stuff, so.
Yeah, so we're really concerned with how you're doing as a whole person as opposed to just how you're doing academically, whether you're passing or failing. And again, these are some things that I encourage you to think about when you're out there looking at different medical schools. We also have free peer tutors and supportive faculty and administration. Then we have the preparation programs and resources for step one. A lot of those resources that students use in their second year, we provide for our students. I think that's pretty common amongst most medical schools these days. And then we have an educational specialist on site. So a lot of times students come in, they don't know that they have tested anxiety, or maybe they develop it once they land in medical school. And our educational specialist can work with those students one-on-one. So again, a little bit more enhanced advising programs. I would say it's a pretty relaxed environment. We give you lunch. That seems to be one of the main things that students are concerned about is where do I get my lunch before they meet with their faculty member. And then I know for most of the McGovern Society leaders, they will meet with their students outside of the classroom. So oftentimes they're invited into the faculty member's home. They go out to dinner or a happy hour. They try to do one or two fun things, outside of the actual setting and designated meeting time. And with that, our faculty members, they also receive training too, to talk to students a little bit more about, if you're really struggling in one area or there's something else that's developing, they're trained to point you in the right direction. And then within those meetings, we also have second years as advisors and third years that will step in as they have time. Okay, so how many freshmen are in here? Freshmen? Sophomores? Sophomores? Juniors? Okay, seniors? All right, so who's taking the MCAT this summer? Okay, and who's planning to apply this next cycle? All right, very good. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some tips and tricks about applying to medical school. So one, understanding the commitment. It's a long journey. You're going to want to keep good documentation of everything that you're doing, meetings that you went to, people that you interacted with, because when you go to fill out the application, you're going to want to have all of that information, dates, names, and a description of what you did. I like to call it a virtual shoebox. You may have heard that from other medical schools. It could be a Google document or an Excel spreadsheet that you keep, just so that if something comes up in the future, or maybe you learn something from myself tonight that will spark an interest or a reflection, that you can go back to add that into your application when you do get ready to apply. Was the lady that was in here before, is she your pre-health advisor?
No, she's the VP of Academic Affairs.
Okay, so do you guys have a pre-health advisor?
He's awesome.
No, we pre-health advisor, yeah, Dr. Kuzarowski.
Okay, great. So I encourage you to maintain good contact with that person. You guys are smiling.
It's an inside joke.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't know if there was something about that professor.
It's awesome. Everyone loves him.
He's really good.
As soon as you can break his little shell, then he's amazing.
Okay, so will you guys all get letters from him?
If you ask, I'm sure he would.
Okay, so, and that's another important thing to do is, with your professors here, you guys are a small university, get to know them, get to know them personally so that when you do go to ask them for a letter, they have something more to write about you than just, John was a great student, he sat in front row, he got an A+, all of that, really open yourself up to talk to them and tell them about, what your passion is, why you want to go into medical school. You'll complete the prerequisite coursework, so I have that information in your booklet there. You do not have to complete all of the prerequisite coursework prior to when you apply, but when you matriculate, you will have to complete all of that. A lot of times I'll get questions as to whether or not you can take those courses online. That is acceptable for our university. Other medical schools may have a different opinion on that, but if you're not taking all the required coursework here, you are welcome to do it outside or do it online through an accredited university. You will find meaningful volunteer clinical shadowing experiences. Does your group here work together to work with doctors locally?
Yeah, we try our best to connect our students with shadowing opportunities, and we're in the talks with our pre-health advisor setting up a program like that.
Yeah, that's excellent. So a lot of times, students will ask me, how do I find that? I suggest that you either cold call, if you are able to do that. You will ask any, family members. A lot of times you'll have family members or friends that are nurses or, doctors that you can ask to begin to shadowing, and really network the best way you know how, or even walking into a doctor's office, leaving your resume and saying, I'm really interested in shadowing this doctor, here's my name. Typically, I think that's how it happens. How did you guys find shadowing?
Family friend, and then I did cold email one or two.
So Rice University actually had a formal shadowing program set up with some of the hospitals in TMC, but I've also reached out to family friends as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I would encourage you guys to, talk to other pre-med health groups to see kind of how they structure it and get it set up, because that will be a good way for you to model it. You will study effectively for the MCAT. Do you have any MCAT resources here? Have you brought anyone to talk about the MCAT?
Not really. All our organization offer, we do have a partnership with Kaplan. They do offer a 10% discount for our members and whatnot. But besides that, most of them are medical school representatives that come and bring up the MCAT and such.
Okay. We have a faculty member. His name is Dr. Carpenter. He often will go out and talk to students, so I will give that information to Jasmine. So if you invite him, he will likely come out here. He's a really interesting guy, so I'm sure he'll give you a good session on the MCAT. For the MCAT, we don't have a minimum. We take a holistic approach when we're looking at applications. I want you to study, timely and effectively for the MCAT. Most students will spend about 100 hours preparing for the MCAT. And really, I want you to take the test when you feel most ready, not when you're stressed, because you want to get the best score the first time and apply the first time. A lot of times students will go in, they'll apply, and then they'll get their MCAT score back, and they'll either have to withdraw their application or they'll have to go in a whole nother cycle till they apply. So my advice is apply with your best application, and that means including your best MCAT score. Our average for the incoming class last year was a 511, and our average GPA was a 3.8. So with that, keep in mind we're taking a range above and below. I don't like to give, who got into the lowest MCAT score, because there's so many other factors that we're looking at in your application that it's not just off of those two scores. Now, I know that there are other medical schools in Texas that won't look at you if you have below a 510. Now, are they gonna tell you that? Probably not, but we do take a range. For this year, I anticipate for the incoming class that it'll go up a tick or two. That just tends to be the trend. Medical schools just becoming more and more competitive. You'll submit a thoughtful, well-prepared application. Again, I encourage you to have that virtual shoebox where you're putting in names and dates and times and descriptions, because when you go to sit down and fill out that application, it's a lot of information all at once. And the best way that you guys can prepare yourself now is to begin to reflect on what your experiences are. You know, 'cause oftentimes you can't really connect the dots going forward, but if you're able to write a few sentences about maybe patient interaction or a doctor that you met, or some advice that you received, you can go back and look at that, and that will help you write those essays that you have to do. And then our interview spots, we will start giving out interviews. So the application opens May 1st. Those applications will be transmitted to us. You can apply without your MCAT score and without your letters of recommendation submitted. TMDSAS is the application system that you use to apply. We get all of that information about 4 to 5 weeks after you apply, and then you're put into another queue. And then our interviews will go out July. We start interviewing between August and January. We bring in about 45 students in a day to interview. That gets us to that over 900. And then you'll wait for an acceptance. Okay. So again, your GPA really is a factor of how you do over a long period of time, where the MCAT is a predictor or a factor of how you do over a short period of time. Does anyone have any questions about GPA or MCAT?
Can you talk more about like trends and whatnot, like not just, because I know a lot of people, some, you know, took years off or you know, or did bad the first couple of years and then improved and such.
Right, okay, so if you had previously done some undergrad work, or you transferred, maybe you're a non-traditional student and you're going back to school, you know, for example, let's say you didn't do so well your first round or even your freshman year. And the trend that we want to see is that your grades are going up. That's something that we're gonna look for. So if you had to withdraw or you failed a course, did you go back and retake it? I will say that if you have anything like that in your application, just address it right away. Or find it somewhere in your secondary application or in the optional essay to talk about it. You know, talk about what the issue was, how you overcame it, and how you got back on track. And I will say that, you know, another trend is we are looking more and more at non-traditional students. They tend to be better prepared. They have had some major problems. You know, they have had to move, maybe they've had other jobs. You know, they've had other responsibilities than say someone who's coming right out of a 4-year traditional university experience. So when they hit medical school and they fail their first exam, they have a little bit better tools in their toolbox to pick themselves up and get back into the game. So really, one of the best predictors of medical school is resilience, and you know, how do you handle that? How do you adapt? How do you change? And also knowing how to get yourself back on track. So any experiences that you have around something like that, and it could be anything, it could be, you know, a family issue, you know, something personal, you know, something about your health. I encourage you to put that in there, because that's one of the themes and qualities that we're looking for in students. You can also go and take, you know, if you have done poorly in one course, you know, to show the admissions committee that you have done well, you can always go and retake the course, or maybe take another upper level course. So again, clinical experience, I don't give a number of hours of how many hours you should have on your application. I'm just gonna say it's a significant amount. Do you remember, Kevin, how many hours you had shadowing?
Are you talking about like volunteering, shadowing?
Just direct shadowing. You have to put it in different sections.
Can we have both numbers, actually?
So I'm trying to remember, this is off the top of my head. I have way more volunteering than I had shadowing.
And that's fine too.
I want to say for my shadowing, I probably had like over 50, but that is, I don't know if that's on the lower end of things.
That is on the lower end, so you know, you're gonna want to somehow right now start to begin to plan out your time. You know, what are you doing with your summer? How can you beef up your volunteer hours or your shadowing hours? Yeah.
If you have a medical condition and you have to spend like quite a bit of time in the hospital and doing, does that count towards anything?
I don't know that it's going to count towards, official portion of your application, but I think it's something that you could address in your essay. And your experience being a patient or having a medical issue, is going to, it's gonna be a little bit different for you, right? You may have less hours because you haven't had as many opportunities, to do that. Where say someone who is a working mom, they may be lighter on community service than they would, be in actually under the work experience. So again, it's just, a factor of placing it in the right areas and then also talking about what is your specific situation. A lot of our students, we don't want our students to look the same when they come in. We don't want them all to be from one university. We want them to have different experiences, different majors, different backgrounds. Do you speak a different language? What really makes you who you are? Because our patients that you see are not all gonna be the same. All right, so community service, do you guys have planned, you have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What about, if what we do as a profession, let's say I have my experience in EMS, but then I transition into a hospital setting working as a patient care tech, would that?
Yeah, so that's gonna count as clinical experience. Now, it'll show how it's, timely, how it plays out in your application. So, when you were in EMS, you're working and now you're doing a different position. Again, we're just gonna be able to trace, what you were doing when, and we're gonna know from your application that maybe you were not able to have as many community service hours because we're working a full-time job. And again, I encourage you to, say something about that in the application. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a similar question. I was in a high school program that was 4 year of clinical rotation. Someone told me because it was in high school, it didn't count as much, but I did get to see surgeries. I got to follow doctors and nurses. I got to be with patients. So does that count as shadowing or no?
It does not. So you won't list that on your application. So when you submit your application, you are attesting that basically from the day that you graduated high school, you have to keep record of everything going forward. So anything in high school doesn't count. But a lot of times students like yourself will have had some kind of, formative experience that they'll want to talk about. I would talk about that in your secondary application. Or a lot of times students were Eagle Scouts, right? That's something really boast about, in my opinion. They'll talk about that, or maybe they did a study abroad, or they moved all over the country. You will add that in. Okay, leader, yep.
I'm sorry, Ross.
Sorry.
But if you do have a medical condition, does it, if it keeps going on during the time that you're applying and getting in, can it hinder you from getting in?
No, that's not something, you don't have to disclose that, and depending on the university, you will want, if you feel comfortable enough, if it prohibits you from picking an interview date or, whatever your situation may be, you'll let someone know so that we can make a proper accommodation for you prior to when you interview, or once you are matriculated into the system, you'll disclose that and essentially that, make sure that we provide you with what you need and you are able to communicate with us with what you need. Okay. Leadership opportunities, I encourage all of you to stay actively involved in this program right now because all the information you guys can pass around together, and easiest time to get involved is really your freshman and sophomore year, sets you up nicely for other leadership opportunities. Leadership opportunities, they don't have to be within a school. You can go out and do something completely on your own. You can make up your own organization. I had a student who was applying and she didn't have any leadership experience. So what she did is once a month, every Saturday, she got some of her other pre-med students into a room. One person brought paper bags, one person brought bread, one person brought jelly and peanut butter. They got together, they made the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They went and collected pamphlets from local free organizations for the homeless. They took this little baggie out and they drove around and they gave it out to homeless people. So you can be creative. It doesn't have to be medical related. It could be anything that you're passionate about. It could be in your church. If you like, animals, you can go and walk dogs. We want to see that you have held other leadership roles outside of maybe what the traditional pathways are. Work experience, it does not have to be related to the healthcare field. Again, having a job and holding a job shows us that you're reliable, that you're responsible, and that you're dependable, and that you show up when you need to be. One of the things that our admissions committee members always gawk over is when a student has experience in a restaurant and is a waiter or waitress. Why do you think that experience is so valuable?
Bedside manner.
Interacting different types of personalities on a daily.
Yeah, so you're walking up to a table, you don't know what you're gonna get. Someone's angry or mad. It's kind of like walking into a room and seeing a patient sometimes. So
Probably ties into your resilience factor.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. So be creative with this and describing what you've learned from these work experiences and how that's going to help you be a better physician, how it's going to prepare you not only for a clinical setting but also maturity too. Honors and awards, so anything academic or personal, sports related, you'll list that in that area. Research, it's not required, but it can certainly enhance your application. If you're not passionate about research, and you know you're not, then I don't want you to go and waste your time trying to find research opportunities. While there's plenty of research opportunities out there, I would rather you do something that really interests you and you feel like you're getting value out of. And then extracurricular activities, so hanging out with your friends. Social media is not an extracurricular activity. I've seen 3,000 hours of weightlifting. That's great, but what else do you do with your time? We see a lot of really strange things in this area, but this is also an area that we want to know who you are outside of just being on a pre-med or pre-health track. Do you play an instrument? Do you hang out with, do you do anything interactive with your family? Are you part of other clubs? Do you go to church? What are your other passions outside of school? Hobbies, languages, all of that. We want to know that you are an active learner, that maybe you like to teach yourself something, because there's going to be plenty of things that in medical school that you have to teach yourself, and you have to do it really quickly. And part of being a doctor is this theme of lifelong learning. Your personal statement, you will tell your story, the motivation and the qualities. My best advice for this is, a lot of times students will say, I did this, and then this sparked this, and then I had, this experience, and this is why I want to go to medical school. I encourage you to, again, use those reflections from your experiences. Put why you want to go to medical school, whatever the aha moment is, right in that first paragraph. Hook the admissions committee member into what it is really about you that's motivating you and what's going to make you a great physician. There are lots of resources out there for writing your personal statement. I do have some TMD SAS magazines up here that I brought for you guys. If you email them, TMD SAS, they will send you a box. So there's 2 editions. It's also on their website, but it's just some step-by-step items for you to think about. And also other medical schools, for example, the Long School of Medicine in San Antonio, Dr. Kellaway will do podcasts and other things. So there's a lot of ways that you can creatively start to think about what you're going to put in your personal statement. And then letters of recommendation, you'll wanna solicit those letters. Again, start to get to know your professors right away so that, there's really some meat and bones in your letters. We can most certainly tell in our admissions committee, meetings whether or not, you know, you're just an average student floating by or this faculty member really knows you. We're really good at reading them and reading into them and picking out the details of who you are and seeing if that matches up against your application. Yeah.
So with the letters of recommendation, I noticed you said a lot about professors, but what about doctors that you shadow?
Yep, that's fine. So the kind of the rule of thumb is we want you to have at least 2 letters from faculty members. So that could be your pre-health advisor, I'm not sure, doctor somebody. And then, you know, another professor here that you're familiar with.
Is there a limit to how many letters of recommendations?
It's 5. You guys don't have a committee packet, right?
We
We
do,
actually do.
yeah, we do.
Okay, so it'll be your committee packet, and then you have the option to put in another additional letter of recommendation on top of that. So with the committee packet, you'll select who you want to be, and then you can add that supplemental one from the person that you shadowed.
So could, like, certain doctors that you shadow, could they send the medical school or university, like, a recommendation? Because I know a few doctors that, like, in Baylor and then a few others, they were saying that they can always send their recommendation to an admissions committee.
Yeah, so you can do that, but if you have a packet, I think that's up to 5 letters, and then you send those additional letters, you have to send them through TMDSAS. The doctor that you choose will put it through there, and then it's transmitted into our system, and I think the limit is you get 1 additional if you have a committee packet. And then you can also choose not to do the committee packet. If you don't want to, you can get the letters individually, but I think it works to your advantage to do the committee packet because it's easier and they get it done quickly through the process. Okay, any other questions about the different areas of the application? Okay. So a little bit of a timeline, most of you are juniors and seniors, just to summarize, you'll take the MCAT when you're truly ready. Again, if you need to take a gap years are becoming more and more popular. Again, prepare that time, schedule out what you're gonna do with all of your summers, write down the times so that you're hitting the marks of what you think is a significant amount of volunteer work, shadowing, and that, you know, the bulk of your application for your experience. You know, look at resources on the AAMC and TMDSAS. You guys can also invite TMDSAS out here.
We're working on
Sometimes,
that.
yeah, they will come out here, you know, if you plan it in advance. They also do podcasts, so if you have a subject that you're dying to hear, you can email them. They have a Facebook group. There's different webinars as well. And then your senior year, you'll continue to complete all the coursework. Just because you've applied doesn't mean that we want all of your stuff to end. You have to keep going with all of that information, and that becomes really important when you're in an interview and they say, well, you know, it says here that you've been volunteering with Dr. So-and-so. What did you do last? What did you see last? What was your interaction? All right, so the prerequisite coursework that's listed in there, I don't think there's anything special about your university in terms that you guys are all set. Okay, then to summarize what we're looking for, you know, I told you everything, but when you go to fill out your application or you're reflecting, the interpersonal competencies is really how you work with other people. How are we gonna know that you're a team player and you get along with everyone and you can walk into a room and, you know, be respectful and sit down in a team and really, you know, go through something. These are things that you're gonna wanna kind of tie back to your application. So, you know, what service have you done and what are you passionate about? Do you like children? Do you like animals? Do you like, well, I say animals because some of you might be, you know, pre-vet, and that's fine too, but a lot of times that can translate. You know, do you like working with women? Do you like, working with the homeless community, what is it really that you're drawn to, and while maintaining an open mind. What social skills do you have? Do you have that leadership? Do you have the ability to motivate other people or get into a room? What kind of perspective are you gonna bring into a situation where you have to do some kind of team-based learning? And these guys will talk about kind of what that's like. And then oral communication, how do you sit down with, someone in an interview, what's showing through in your letters that we know that you're gonna be, an excellent communicator. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and then intrapersonal competencies, that's how you relate to yourself. So have you had any misconduct or misdemeanors? You will have to disclose that in your application. Or if you've had to withdraw or drop out of any coursework, how are you gonna respond when you're put in that kind of situation? Are you reliable and dependable? Work experience ties directly back to that. And then again, the number one predictor of how you're gonna do in medical school is that resilience and adaptability. What experiences have you had that show us that you can handle, what's about to come at you? Like they were saying, the fire hydrant. There's really no way to know what that's like until you're going through it. And then your capacity for improvement. Are you teaching yourself new things? How do you teach yourself new things? So a lot of that new material is gonna come at you quickly. So my advice to you, amongst some other tidbits, is for you guys to set some goals, plan out what you're gonna do each year, who you're gonna contact, different relationships that you want to build. You're gonna get organized, so, set those goals with certain hours or, talking to other people maybe who have navigated the system. Communicate, again, maintain those relationships with, those schools, admissions advisors, pre-health advisors, doctors, other people in your community that you can really lean on. And then again, submit your best application. If there's any doubt that you don't feel like this is your best work, maybe that you need more time to mature, could be anything, financially, whatever it is, take that time to go and do that, and then come back with your best application. Okay, other specific admissions questions, things that you have heard, rumors that I can clarify.
There's just one real big one that I was told that you guys take hazelnut as part of the coursework. Is that true?
Is that military?
Yes.
We do, yeah, I think we do.
Okay.
But I'll give you my card, and then you can just shoot me an email and I'll confirm.
Okay.
But I do, because when you are admitted, we have to send a letter to them saying that you are a student, and then I think our financial docs does that transaction.
Gotcha. Okay.
I know a physician who used hazelnut.
For McGovern. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I was told every public medical school, or I've heard private, had a
Yeah, private.
opportunity to
Yeah,
say
private.
no. Okay.
Yeah, I think they call it something else, but I could be wrong.
You said financially, so, do you guys take credit into consideration?
What do you
Like,
credit?
in the whole process? Like,
Your credit score?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
But certainly if you have had something struggling around that, a lot of times, with Hurricane Katrina, whatever it may be, there were students that struggled with that, and that was a significant part of their life, that they had to overcome, or they had a challenge with that either interrupted, school or their family life that they talked about in their application. Yeah.
My Vital One was an AP class. Is that going to hinder me?
So any AP classes, they have to be on your university transcript. That will still count. It won't hinder you at all, as long as you continue to take the coursework appropriately. We're gonna look at everything, just one AP course is not gonna be a factor. Yeah.
Is there a certain process you go about like ranking applications? Like, is it just a few people that are designated to just go through and rank them, or is it a committee, or? What are the
Okay,
insights on that?
so how it works is, you apply, we get your application, we have all of your materials, we have your MCAT, we have your letters, everything's 100% ready to go. You go in front of a screener. The screener, in that position, they make a decision to either kind of put you into a hold pool or an interview pool. So if you go to hold, you're moved over, or there's also a reject. So reject, you're out, hold, you're put into another pool. If you interview, then you go into an admissions committee, executive admissions committee meeting, where the group, we all sit around with little iPads and laptops. We look at you more in detail, there's more eyes on you, and we decide, yes, we do want to interview you, or we put you into another hold pool. And then from there, if you do get an interview invite, we reach out to you, say, congrats, we're gonna interview you, and then you go and schedule your time. So it's a couple of different tiers, and then as we're going through the screening process, we may go back into those different pools and pull in applications.
And so do you look at everything across the spectrum, or do you like, okay, if they don't have a certain GPA or MCAT, then they're gonna go automatically and hold?
No, so like I was saying, we don't have any cutoffs. Again, we take a holistic approach. We want to know, are you from a small town or a large town? Where did you, have you traveled anywhere? Do you speak other languages? What are your other hobbies? We want students that maybe have not taken the traditional path, but still have a good makeup of something that we need. So if you are, a public health major, or maybe you're really passionate about public health. Again, we have a lot of students that might want to go into being a veterinarian, but then they change their mind. We have art history majors. We just have a lot of different types of students. And again, I think, my students here today can tell you a little bit about their classmates. We have, a handful of military. Last year, we had a guy, I think he's 42. I called him the day after he retired, and I said, hey, what do you feel about going to medical school? And he said, that's great, because I just retired. And within a month, he had to move out here and, switch gears. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
In our second year class, we have a veterinarian. He's 52, and he switched careers. We have a fighter pilot coming in, just a lot of different career paths. People that have been teachers, students that have really studied different things. So.
And then, sorry, I have another question. So does it hurt, for instance, for some students here, especially at our university, a lot of people tend to go to community college, get their basics there, and then transfer out, whether they take their basics there or take Gen Bio, Gen Chem, etc. Does that affect them in any way?
No. I'm speaking for McGovern.
Right.
I know that other medical schools will have a different opinion on this. They may prefer a larger university, or they may prefer something else. They may tell you, don't take an online course, don't go to a community college, go to a university.
Right.
We don't have a preference. We want to see that you have continued to do well academically, and you have navigated the application process to the best that you know how. So we know students coming from this program are going to look a little bit different than, say, someone coming from Rice, where they are really academically supported. They have things in line for them, like research opportunities, or same at SMU. Everyone, you can't graduate out of there without having research on your resume. So it's really just going to be dependent upon, the school and your surrounding, and, opportunities that not only your school provides, but what you've built for yourself. Yeah.
As far as repeating courses, do you guys take the most recent grade or average? And is that just science classes or for everything?
So we break down your scores. We look at your overall science GPA, and then we look at your overall. We take the average of that. And TMD, SES, they're the ones that process all of that. They classify all your coursework and stuff. questions, maybe things that you've heard? Yeah.
I have a question. Is it true that medical schools take all of your, even like your medical records?
Your personal medical
Or
records?
your medical records?
No, that would be illegal.
Okay, because I've heard, and I just want to like, know like if y'all have access to them, basically.
No, it would be
I was about to
against,
say, because my mom told me, I'm like, no.
you know, if, okay, so let's say, you know, if Kevin were to go and look at my medical records, if I've been at the, you know, UT Health, you know, he would have no reason to go and look, so that would be a huge violation.
I would potentially be kicked out of medical school.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It was sounding very fishy.
No, but if you, like, if for any reason you have a disability, you don't have to disclose that. When you apply, it's up to you whether or not you want to. You know, I always encourage students to, you know, report honestly, and truthfully, about those types of things, because that can open up other opportunities for you, especially scholarship opportunities and other resources out there for you. Okay, other questions, other things that you may have heard? Yeah.
You mentioned scholarships.
Uh-huh.
So there are scholarships in medical school.
There are. So at McGovern, I'm gonna be honest, we don't have a lot of scholarship money compared to other medical schools, say like San Antonio or Dell. But we do have one full ride scholarship along with a handful of other scholarships that account between 1 and 2 million that we give out to our students. And then students are also able to apply for scholarships in their second year. So if you don't get a scholarship coming in on your first year, you can on your second year too. Most of them are, you know, academic based or need based, or, you know, we'll ask you to report off of your FAFSA as well.
There's also grants, so if you apply for financial aid as a grad student, you don't have to report your parental income. And so like for me, I got like $4,000 in grants right off the bat too, so it's very nice.
Yeah, we have, we do a lot of financial counseling as well. We, you know, within the school, one of our faculty members just left, but another faculty member will pick it up about, you know, coming into medical school, you have a lot of debt. What do you do with that? How do you manage your finances? And, you know, how do you set yourself up in the future to do that? You took that course, right?
Yeah, good chance.
Okay, I'll let you talk about that later. Okay, other questions?
Okay,
Yeah.
another one. So obviously, not everybody can get in. So the people that you guys do not accept, do you disclose why so that they can improve?
Yeah, so if you don't get in, you can write an email to me or have my card out here. You can just say, hey Laura, I met you at this talk. I don't do it for everybody just because I'm the only admissions person, so my time is fairly limited. But, you know, since I've met you and we've established some rapport with your group, I'm happy to do that. What I usually do is I spend 15 minutes on the phone with someone. I will ask you to prepare, you know, what you think are your 3 weaknesses in your application and why you didn't get in. So that would be the phase if you didn't get selected for an interview, and I'll give you that honest feedback. Again, that's just a lot of times it has to be really general, but if there are red flags, I'm usually able to pick them out right away as opposed to going into the little details, because normally it's not something that's really small that didn't get you in. And then if you do interview after our class list has been set and you interviewed, and let's say, you know, you want to know why, and there are times where I will go back, I'll summarize the comments, and I will deliver whatever it is in the interview. Maybe you came off overconfident, maybe you were socially awkward, or maybe there was something that just rattled the interviewer into why you didn't get in. And there's a lot of strange things that happen on interview day that you know. But are you guys gonna do any mock interviews?
We're working on all that too.
Okay.
Yes, it's in the process. We're kind of like we're still new, a new organization here on campus. But it's kind of funny because you're bringing up all these things, like bringing a TMSDA's representative and all those things.
Yeah.
I met with like a UTMB physician that reached out to us, and we discussed like all these things, just setting it up and putting it in the works.
Yeah, you'll want to do mock interviews as well.
Yeah, they're willing to come in, like she and her colleague, she's a resident at, resident anesthesiologist at UTMB, Galveston. She's willing to bring some of her fellow residents to come and do one-on-one mock interviews.
Yeah, definitely do that. The other thing is that if you guys would like to do a tour, we do tours of our medical school. They're typically during the week from 12 to 1. So you guys, Jasmine, you guys can shoot me an email if you guys want to come as a group. That way you can go and see it together. Or we do have a monthly perspective tour where you can just come by yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna head out, but I left the dual degree information here, and then the TMDSES magazines, which can also be found online. This is their newer one, and then the dual degree documents here, as well as my card. If there's something else that you want to talk about, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'd love to help you guys. And then, you know, if you need other faculty members or ideas, talks, because we are so close in relationship, I think it'd be great for us to get some other people in here to talk about it. I'm gonna leave it up to these guys. Ask them all the questions you possibly can. Please utilize them. They're great students. They're student ambassadors, so they help me on interview day. And they do a lot more than just go to medical school, so I'm gonna encourage you to chat. And then will you guys bring all the leftovers in this tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks you guys.
I think we make it pretty informal. I don't know, just yell out questions or raise your hand, whatever. I will say that I think once in a while, it can be like pretty brutally honest about med school, so we'll tell you all the good, all the bad, getting in, whatever. So ask away.
Okay.
Yeah, hit me.
So, did you guys get accepted to multiple schools? I guess I'll just leave it at that.
You want me to answer that? Yeah. Yes, I did get accepted to schools. If you know about the TMDSAS cycle, you can get pre-matches. So there's like match day where the computer drops all your other acceptances and matches you to a medical school so that you're holding one specific spot. But to answer your question, yeah, I got a few pre-match offers.
Were you, did you apply out of state?
I did, but I didn't have any luck here.
How many did you apply to?
So all the ones in the state of Texas, plus I did I scattershot like 4 or 5 out of state. Blew a bunch of money on secondaries there, but yeah.
Yeah, it was exactly the same answer as him, so I got also multiple acceptances. I did apply out of state, but I had preference in state just because the tuition is way lower here. So, yeah.
It's like the quality of medical school in the state is awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Whenever you got accepted to multiple medical schools, how many did you actually interview at?
Let's see. Do a mental note. Let's see. 6.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the same. So, yeah, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the rank process from TMPSS. So you'll interview everywhere, let you get an interview, and then you'll rank all those schools, and then whatever school accepts you at your high school. So you get accepted to your number 2 choice, you'll automatically be withdrawn from all the acceptances below that. So 3, 4, 5, or whatever else. So you'll get your highest. It does. It does.
So you're allowed to rank wherever you interview, and then you'll hold the spot, the highest ranked spot. It'll drop everything else, and then once out-of-staters start choosing if they want to go out of state or stay, the wait list will move, and eventually, if you get accepted to your number 1 option, then you can choose hey, do I want to go to my number 1 or my number 2? And if you choose your number 1, it will drop your number 2. Yeah.
Okay, another one. Did you apply to any DO schools, and how do you feel about them? About DO programs?
So yeah, I applied to the DO school in Texas. That's the TCOM up in Fort Worth, but it's the same application. My philosophy on applying to medicine was your number 1 priority is getting into a medical school, because at the end of the day, if you have a DO by your name, you're still a physician, and you work on the same tier as MDs. You work in the same hospitals, see the same patients. So if my acceptance was to DO, I would take it.
Actually,
how was the interview process for you guys?
So I guess the interview process isn't as bad as people make it sound. I thought a lot of my interviews were very conversation. They just want to get to know you and see if you're like an actual person and communicate besides words on a paper. They'll ask you what you're interested in, so it's not something that they're drilling you with a bunch of questions. I know some schools do like MMIs, which are more structure based. They'll give you like ethical questions, but McGovern and several other schools are just more like conversations. You know, they'll ask you about your specific experiences on your application, so knowing those is like really important. Know them really well, be able to see, like, explain what meaning you got out of those experiences. So.
I mean, inevitably, a lot of you guys will travel around the state and just take whatever interview dates they give you. Generally, it's a full day thing. You go in, you either get a morning interview slot or an afternoon interview slot. At McGovern, you get 2 interviewers, and most of the time, yeah, like Cole said, it's pretty conversational. Just want to make sure you're not a sociopath, frankly.
Yeah. How long is that time here, like, for the interview? Is it 10 minutes? Was it 45?
I think they give you about 30 minutes for it, so they're roughly 25 to 30 minutes, and then you have 2 of them, and then the rest of the interview day is like tours and having interactions with like student ambassadors, like through panels and stuff, or having lunch with the faculty.
Some of my friends, they had their interviews run long. Apparently, sometimes they like pull them over and they have a really, really good conversation. And other times, I heard one case where the interviewer had to leave super early because they got called to some surgical case or something. But generally, it's somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour long conversation. Yeah.
Any proper attire?
Suit and tie. Well, for men, generally suit and tie.
Certain color?
You know,
Not black.
I heard about a not black thing. I saw plenty of people wearing black. It didn't actually matter. I think it's overplayed. But just look fancy. Don't make sure. I will say that you probably want to make sure the suit fits. Don't pull your dad's suit out of his closet. Make it look really baggy, like you're a gangster from the 30s. But other than that, as long as you look nice, well presented, you're fine.
Okay, I know I keep asking this question.
Go for it.
Were you guys non-traditional students? Did you guys get in your first time? And then what do you think, you spoke personally, what do you think was what they chose you over somebody else?
So I'm a traditional applicant. I did get in first time around. And what was the third part of your question?
What do you think personally about you made them choose you?
So like Laura really emphasized, it's a really holistic process. I don't think there's one thing that on my application that I can say that like set me apart from everything. I think it's just really important about having variety. So in my application, I tried to like have a lot of different types of volunteering or leadership, and I think just trying to become a well-rounded applicant is probably what's really important, because they're looking at everything. It's not one thing that they are like there's no cutoff that you have to have like this number of hours or like this GPA. So just try to put the best application together that you can.
Yeah. So I'm also a traditional student. Again, I know we're traditional students. We do lots of non-trads that are in our class, and I think that's trending that way. A lot of people are taking gap years, and our school really likes having diversity. So they like having people who have come out of different careers, different walks of life. I like to say that the path to medicine is not linear. Before I get off too far of a tangent, I will say we have like a former NFL player, we have a fighter pilot, we have a former lawyer, a lot of different people. One guy, you know Tim, right? He majored in music. He's amazing at the piano. He's a god. It's amazing. But let's see. I'm a traditional student. What else?
Did you get in the first time?
I got in the first time. And again, like Como said, I think it's a pretty holistic process. I was an Eagle Scout. I did some study abroad stuff. I don't know if they had it, and if they were entertained by this, but I did a lot of research on like bees and wasps. So they might have known
Bees, apex.
I did apids, megacylids, yeah. A lot of
apex species.
Oh.
They're endangered. Okay.
Oh yeah. But yeah, stuff like that. So yeah, they like, but I will say they like having diversity and they like having interesting people.
First year at McGovern, well, I mean, there's so many, you know, you've basically gone through the entire first year. Like, what part really stood out to you when you got foundations, you have introductory to, doctoring, patient care. I mean, what about this first year now, like really stood out to you guys?
I'll say anatomy lab. Because actually a lot of schools nowadays, or not a lot, but some schools nowadays don't even use whole cadavers anymore. They use like virtual ones, which quite frankly is a lot easier on the student. Because whenever you have a cadaver, you have to cut away a lot of skin, a lot of connective tissue and stuff. It takes a lot of time. But I'm kind of old school in that way, and I think that it's a time-honored tradition, and there's nothing different than learning about anatomy from your first cadaver. So cool.
What were some popular interview questions? Because I heard since you're student ambassadors, I'm assuming y'all get the chance to interview some of the prospective students.
We do. We'll get the chance probably in a couple of years.
Yeah, so right now McGovern doesn't do student-led interviews. Right now it's just faculty, but
We're
I
in
think
line.
I think in the next couple of years we'll be able to start doing that.
Yeah.
So.
But we can tell them some questions that we got on the interview.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so for me, like a big one was like, give me an ethical situation you've been in. Describe it and talk me through like what your reasoning was to make that decision. Another one was like, honestly, the easiest one, and like you have to know is like, tell me about yourself. Have like a 5-minute elevator pitch about yourself, and then why medicine. Those are like big ones. Got it.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of them just because it's been almost like 2 years. But strengths and weaknesses will ask. I think for my McGovern interview, actually the person had so they do see the interviewers have access to your application. So she had my application right in front of her, and she was just kind of like say like, hey, tell me about this. What did you learn from this experience? So those types of questions are very common. So that's why I say like whatever you put in your application, make sure it's honest and you know it super well. And be able to speak for it and be like, this is what I learned, or this is what I gained from this experience, whether that be volunteering or leadership or some other activity that you did inside or outside of school.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it wouldn't go well for anybody who tries to BS says I got involved in this
Never lie.
organization and did
Never
everything
lie. I had a friend in undergrad who claimed he spoke fluent Spanish. Never, I don't think he ever went past like Spanish 3 in high school. Turns out he got placed with a native speaker. So, needless to say, he did not go into that school.
Ooh.
But yeah, so don't lie. Even if you're kind of iffy about it, like don't dance around it. Be solid in your application and know your application very well, because you will be asked stuff about sometimes like the most minute details. Like I had a friend who like interviewed with a guy who just went through his personal statement and like found one sentence, just like, hey, so tell me about this. And so make sure you know your application really well. Yeah.
Any examples of the ethical thing you mentioned?
Yeah, well, so the one, I can't remember the one that I went. What was the
How many do you have?
Oh, so I TA for a class, and I messed up because, like for me, it was like, you enter grades and stuff, and a student came to me to change the grade, and yeah, I messed up, so I changed the grade automatically. But you have to go through the professor, so I got in trouble for that. I just explained like, why my ethical reasoning was not right. It was kind of a lapse in judgment and what I learned from it. Can be positive, can be negative.
How many times did y'all take that and how did y'all do?
I took it twice. I don't think I I personally don't want to disclose my score, but yeah, I would say that like there's no cutoff at Laura Seniority,
Right.
so just like focus on doing the best. If you feel like you're not comfortable with your score the first time around, take it a second time. It's not a problem at all.
Can they see how many times you've taken it?
Yes, they can. They will see unless you void the score on test day, they will see, like if you choose to score the test, they will see the result of the test, no matter what. For me, I took it once, I was one and done.
What'd you get?
513.
I've heard it said before that getting into medical school is the easy part and staying in is the hard part. Do you guys agree with that? And compared to like your upper level undergraduate courses, I've also heard that the first 2 years is like just a repeat of everything you've learned. Do you think medical school is hard because the level of content or the amount of content?
think it's the amount of contact. I think once you get in, I think that's a great accomplishment. Once you're there, you're meant to be a doctor. It's very, I mean, I don't think very many people like drop out or withdraw or anything. So they've chosen you for a reason. Obviously, your application stood out and you're well qualified to be a physician. The first 2 years is not just like your pre-medical coursework. I would say like the first semester, there was a lot of stuff that overlapped with pre-medical coursework just because they want to make sure everyone's on the same page, because everyone's coming from different majors, so they'll give you a refresher on like biochemistry and anatomy and physiology and stuff that you might have already learned. But then once you get into system space, you really have to like go into breadth and depth, which is I guess something the comment you made earlier, because you have to know everything in detail rather than what you focus on in the pre-medical course that we just kind of go brush the surface. Gotta know all the drugs, the physiology, the anatomy, the inside and out.
Yeah, I guess kind of a random one, but so while I was in nursing school in pharmacology, depending on the professor, they had different things they would emphasize. They had, so I thought logically they would focus on the mode of action, and you know, instead they ended up focusing on only very primarily like just drug interactions. Are you expected to know every single bit of it? Do they care a lot about drug? I mean, obviously you care about drug interactions, you don't build that.
Yeah.
But I meant like, you know, when they're testing over this stuff, I mean, are they focusing on just who it's meant for and how it's metabolized, or kind of how do they do that? So
I will say OChem is not really a thing in medical school. You don't have to freak out about whether or not you're gonna remember your mechanisms. You have to know like, you know, push carbons and stuff. But as for drugs, what's nice about medical school is that all curriculums are pretty much standardized. So whenever you take your exams, starting from after first semester, it's all according, you're taking board style questions. So our tests are literally pulled from a test bank with like questions that have been on past board exams or past step exams. So to answer your question about pharmacology, there's a set amount, there is a finite amount of information you have to know. It is rather expansive. Like you have to know your drug interactions, you have to know what it's used for, and they'll give you a challenging patient case as to whether or not, like, do you give this drug or this drug or this drug. But it doesn't have the subjectivity that like if a professor really likes mechanism of action, they're gonna ask a lot of mechanism of action questions, right? No, it's all standardized. So you have just an equal chance of getting a mechanism question versus like a side effect question or something.
2 questions. Do y'all study with friends, and how's your way of studying? And actually 3 questions. And the second question is, do you feel like a competitive vibe amongst your colleagues?
Okay. So as far as studying, I would say I split my time. I do a lot of individual studying. I try to do like my first pass on my own. And then studying in a group, just kind of like to quiz each other, do like questions together. I think it's just helpful to kind of like talk things out. Sometimes we'll write things out. In fact, we study together a lot. So I would say I split my time, and I feel that's true for a lot of people in med school as well. And your second question was, sorry?
Second question is, do you feel like a competitive vibe amongst your colleagues?
I would say not one bit. Actually, McGovern is a super supportive, collaborative environment. In fact, everyone's willing to share resources, and students are constantly like putting up through like a Facebook group or group message, like, hey, I took these, like, I made a summary or a chart or whatever, took notes on this, like, I'll post it and share it through Google Drive or whatever means it is. So no one wants to feel like, oh, I'm gonna do better than you, I'm gonna keep all the resources. It's never been like that. So super collaborative, never felt like it was cutthroat at all, which is why I feel like many students like love McGovern for the community that we have.
We're not ranked. Our class isn't ranked, so it doesn't matter. What's the point of like shooting that guy now?
Right.
The resources that you kind of talk about questions like, do you pull those from UWorld, or what resources do y'all use to study?
So the school does provide RX and does provide UWorld in second year, I think.
UWorld is for second year.
Yeah, and we have RX, we have, what else? Pathoma and first aid.
Pathoma and first aid are the
yeah. So those are like super important. So the school provides us that, and then that's a pretty good.
You also have the lectures, but let's be honest, the material is pretty standardized, and the lectures sometimes like choose different stuff.
And that's what I was gonna ask, because mandatory you have to show up for lectures?
No, there are mandatory lectures. So if there's a patient that's going to be talking about their story, you have to be there. There's certain required stuff like examinations, obviously, and then there's like these what do you call them? Practice sim lab. Yeah, sim lab and stuff. Yeah.
So anything with standardized patients or simulation sessions. We have twice a week what we call problem-based learning, which is led by a faculty. And they just work through patient cases. And you'll have to like sit with a group of like 7 other students and like come up with a differential diagnosis and like a treatment plan. And you know, just that's pretty much what you do twice a week for 2 hours. That's mandatory. And then there's a few lectures that are held by the Student Affairs Office, which are also mandatory, but everything else is streamed, so you do not have to be in class for it. That's up to you. But there's still a fair amount of students who like to come to class because that's how they learn.
And do you get your ACLS and PAL certification while?
We do, but that's more of a end of second kind of thing.
Oh.
Did you just jump in?
Like, did you hold jobs or?
I did not work.
I did, but I was TA for about like 5 semesters.
Don't know anybody that.
That work jobs?
Yeah.
Plenty. Oh yeah, yeah. And again, like Laura said, if you worked in the service industry, they love that stuff because you know how to deal with people. But yeah, I mean, it's again, I really like to emphasize this whole diversity thing. I know a guy who worked on an oil rig for quite a bit of time. So yeah, definitely people who have been have had different kinds of employment.
Well, what is one advice each of y'all would give us, like if you were to go back and redo everything again? Or one thing you'd change or suggest?
Study something you really enjoy. I hated biology, just regular biology. I would have, if I could go back again, I would have majored in art history. Because quite frankly, your major doesn't really matter as long as you do the prerequisites. It's better to have a passion for whatever you do. And I managed to find that late in my health and society major, but it took me 2 years to figure that out.
I would say try something new. Do whatever. Don't feel like you have to kind of stick to like a norm of like he said, a science major. Like really diversify your experiences and whatever it is. I was involved in student government pretty much all 4 years that I was at Rice, so that was what I was passionate about, and it was completely outside of like being pre-med. So I would say do whatever you like. It doesn't matter what it is because the admissions committee is really looking for someone who brings something different to our med school class and can contribute in that way.
Ask.
So the specialty that you guys had in mind doing for the rest of your life before medical school, has that changed now that you are in it? And do you think that an individual should know what they want to do before they get into medical school, or do you think medical school is where you kind of find out?
You do not need to know at all coming in what you want to do. I would say there's a lot of people who talk to me just like we don't know. So come in with an open mind, because you're gonna, like, I went through like whatever the HIP talk, and I was like, oh, now I don't want to be like a hematologist, oncologist. I think once you get to learn things more in depth, you get to realize, okay, this is not something that I'm very interested in. So definitely keep an open mind, and by no means you need to come in. There's even some people don't even figure out until like third year. They go on their rotations and actually interact with patients, and they're like, this is what I want to do. So don't feel the pressure to figure it out now. I'm interested personally in orthopedic sports medicine because it's related to my major in kinesiology sports medicine, and then I worked as a personal trainer for a short amount of time too. So that's what got me interested in that path, but I'm still keeping an open mind because I know once I start rotations, I might find something else that's interesting to me.
Yeah. So we're MS1, so we're still a little early on in our training. But whenever you talk to some MS3s and MS4s that are about to finish up, a lot of them are like, yeah, I came in, you know, I would really want to do cardiology. And then third year, man, I went into surgery. I thought I would hate it, but oh, it was awesome. You hear those stories all the time. People change a lot. You don't really know, like you can have an idea of what you're interested in coming in, But you don't truly know what a day in the life of that specialty is until you actually rotate like a full month. You know, you're working 24-hour shifts, and you see the terrible, the bad side, and the good side of whatever that specialty has to offer.
Actually, that brings up, I've heard different amounts of times for rotations.
Yeah.
Is 4-week block like a typical rotation? Like if you had to go do a rotation, you know, in Mississippi or something, like would it be about 4 weeks?
Well, so you do your core rotations like your surgery, your internal med, your neurology in Houston.
Oh,
So
okay.
what you're talking about is, I think what you're mentioning is away rotation. So if you want to match in a specialty that is not exactly in Texas, if you're trying to get out of the state or the region, say you wanted to go to like, I don't know, North Dakota or something, you would probably do a 1-month rotation there. But generally, the main rotations are 2 months long in Houston.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are 1 month.
I thought it was mandatory they have to do.
Oh, no. Everything is within a reasonable distance. I think the farthest you'll have to travel may be you have to drive to Clear Lake for family med, because sometimes they put you
Yeah.
No, you're not traveling. That's a luxury that you have, because again, McGovern is in the Texas Medical Center, right? It's like the biggest med center in the country. So you have so many resources available to you to shadow, to research, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Do you have conflicts in like work ethics?
You don't work in medical school. Once you start medical school, your job is to train to be a physician. Your opportunities to get paid, like I think some of the students work part-time as like the people who run the desk at the library or something, but you know they're running it, and then they have their computer to study.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like a lot of people treat med school like an 8-to-5 job. They'll like start studying at 8 and they finish at 5, and then after 5 it's just like, you know, just taking care of yourself and doing all that kind of stuff, because that's very important in med school too. So I would say going to med school is pretty much a full-time job. So it's hard to be able to do other stuff other than being involved, like working at like the library front desk or some other thing.
if you're worried about getting paid though, there's something called the summer preceptorship. So between MS1 and MS2, you can get paid up to $5,000 just to rotate, basically like advanced shadowing through a family med or an internal med office. It's pretty cool.
Okay, after 15 minutes. I heard that how well you do on your MCAT correlates to how well you do on the STEP. Yay or nay?
So statistically, no. I believe the biochemistry section has had some degree of correlation, but also keep in mind that this is a new test. So a lot of the content, the method of testing is different. So I can't speak to yay or nay on that because they only have like what, 2 or 3 years of data.
Okay, but so you never heard of that before then? So yeah.
I haven't heard of it.
I've heard that. I've actually heard the opposite. That you said your MCAT and how well you do on STEP.
Yeah, how well you do.
Yeah, I've heard the opposite.
You heard the opposite? Okay. Also, the buddy group program that she was mentioning, y'all paired up with a buddy. Do they pass on their notes to y'all? Is it like a little tradition that they pass on their notes, or do they usually not?
Yeah, typically they do. They'll share notes and stuff. They're resident informants. There's I've texted my buddy all the time, be like, hey, I'm studying for this. How did you study for that? Or do you have anything? And she'd be like, oh, I made this for that. So they're willing to share resources and anything in there that they can do to help.
I'm guessing those notes were helpful since you go back and ask for more notes.
Yeah, I mean, the notes, there's like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Anki, so like a lot of the MSUs have made like Anki tags, so that's a great resource for us that have been passed down from year to year. So all sorts of stuff.
Thank you.
Can you go on credits or what?
Yeah.
So you said that y'all pretty much go in there with an open mind about what path you want to go from like medical school. Would it look bad though to like go into your interview kind of knowing what you want to do, or do they expect you to have like an open mind?
No, there's nothing wrong with having a good idea as long as you make it known that you have an open mind.
Okay.
And I don't know if Laura agrees with me or not. My philosophy is if you're going to say something, at least have something to back it up. Like, maybe have if you say you want to be an emergency med doc, have shadow emergency med, or at least be able to speak intelligently about it, because inevitably you'll be asked why emergency med.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, oftentimes in my interviews with you, like, I think I'm interested in these two, but I still have an open mind. I'll just kind of, like you said, kind of speak from like the shadowing experiences or whatever else I've learned.
Two questions.
Yeah.
They're not really related, so I'll ask one first. So, shadowing your volunteer hours. I mean, I know you kind of told me like 50, but you said that was like a lower.
Mine was super low compared
Do you think like 100 or 200? Like, do you think is a
I
good
would say
amount
that's pretty good.
of each category? Like 200 for shadowing and 200 volunteers, 200 total?
Here's what I'll say about it. I think way more in quality over quantity. So, in your application, you're gonna have like a little field where you can write about what you did. So if you do like 500 hours at one place, you better write about like how it made a difference. Like for those 50 hours for me may have been short, but they changed me a lot. Like I saw a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's not just quantity, it's also the quality of the experience. Because like you could be there for like 60 hours, but learn so much within that 60 hours, just because you had so much interaction with the patients or the physician that you're working with. So that's why like we emphasize like there's really no like cutoff or like a number, like a magic number that you need to get. So yeah.
Thank you. My second question is, did you guys, like, are you guys gonna just take out loans for everything and graduate with 117,000? And how are you guys managing your living expenses? And you don't have to go into specific details if you don't feel comfortable.
Okay. Yeah. So I got the grant, and then I have loans, and I also had some scholarship money left over from undergrad. So I sourced it from like different ways, but you can take out the government loan, which is like a 6% interest rate, and there's also a bunch of other like loans that you can get. I got like one from the school directly for like 5%. Again, you'll be covered for your entire 4 years for financial aid, but I just kind of like switched my loans around. I don't advise going private loans because you have to pay those back pretty quickly, but the majority of mine are loans. And Texas med schools are cheap, right? So
Yeah.
there's no complaining from that end.
So it's like 80,000 a year, I think.
Yeah.
I guess that leads to another question. If you guys would not have been accepted into in-state, would you have have been accepted out of state? Because of the cost, would you go out of state or would you apply again and try to get in-state?
I assume if you applied out of state initially, y'all already knew the risk going in.
Yeah. I was gonna say the out of state schools I applied to were very competitive. But if I somehow got into one of those, I would go either way. I'll eat the cost because as a physician, it'll take some time, but you'll make it back.
Yeah, for me, the schools that I applied out of state were just like, kind of like, I guess you could say ranked schools or like high ranked schools. I wasn't gonna go to a school that was like equally ranked to schools here, because I was like, there's such great education here. If I'm gonna get the same education there and here, I might get it at a better cost. So that was my reasoning. So I just kind of applied to out of state ranked schools. And if I got in, I would go and just, I guess see what's Boston, but fortunate enough to be here.
Do they look down on shadowing family members? Like, let's say I wanted to go shadow my doctor in Canada, my uncle in Canada. Would they look down on that?
I think it's okay.
I think
it's just as far as getting a recommendation letter, I don't think you can get it from a family
friend or whatever. If you want to clarify, probably shoot or an email, but I think it's okay. Yeah, just as long as you're recommended from them. Yeah.
So, what if you did shadowing or like volunteering over one until the country? Would they get them to
Yeah, they count.
consideration, or does it have to be like, oh, you have to shadow here and then you have to like,
You can shadow abroad.
Yeah, I think a good chunk of my volunteering community service was abroad. I did like 100 do a school trip.
To have like shadow experience, like out in the country, you can experience more, but out here, like, that's where large people will be much more than that.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll give you an advantage per se to do your shadowing outside of the country. If it's like same number of hours outside versus inside, you know, save yourself the cost of airfare, do it here.
Yeah. And on your application, they have a place like for each experience you can put like the dates as well as where you did it. So if you did it out of country, you can put that too. Yeah.
Yep.
How do you do it with relationships, like your family and boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and children? If any.
Yeah, so, let's see, family, I went to school in Austin, so it was a little far away. So the transition already happened by that point. So they were used to me being, you know, out of the city. I'm from Dallas, so it's not that far, you know, I can drive back. For girlfriend, it took a little bit of getting used to. We had to switch to long distance, but you make it work. And honestly, my case isn't bad because I know there are some long distance marriages that are happening now. And actually, we have several engagements that have happened. One of our classmates' wife is now pregnant. Life happens, and life, you know, one of the big things I was told was life doesn't stop for med school. You know, your friends move on to get jobs and stuff, but you're doing medical stuff. So you have to find a way to make it work, and it's all about balance. Yeah.
Do you have any friends there that like have children and have children before coming to medical school, and are they surviving?
Oh yeah,
well?
there's some people who have like 6-month-old babies right now, or even older kids too. So it's definitely doable.
Yeah, it really is just about managing your time. I have a friend who he has a 2-year-old, and so what he does is he comes to school at 8 a.m., studies until like 3 or 4, goes home, and whenever you're at home, everything's shut down.
You have any single parents? And when I say single, I mean like you are they're the only people providing for your children.
Are you interested? Is that what you're asking for? Try to get a hookup?
No. No, I mean
Come on,
like,
Megan.
you know,
Shame on you.
obviously, you know, but
I kind of
that's why I put in the whole
Yeah.
vibe, like you
I'm
provide.
trying to think, do we have any in our class right now? Like single parents? Not off the top of my head. I know they exist. I don't know if
I know they exist.
I know they exist. I don't know if at our school, because our class is 240, but I'm pretty sure there's one at Dell right now. But yeah.
Do y'all have or know of any classmates that end up getting pregnant while in medical school?
Yes.
And survive it?
So actually, after I was accepted to McGovern, we had like a student send-off reception. And one of the alums said she was spent like 6 of the 8 semesters in med school either pregnant or breastfeeding or something. And I was like, that's insane. So definitely, like he's saying, life goes on. Like you can still manage everything with like family and other relationships. It's just about how you manage your time.
Yeah.
Literally, like I said, if you treat it like an 8 to 4 or 5 job, and then after that you shut everything out and spend time with your family, you can definitely make it work.
They have focus sessions on this stuff. We have a retreat, and then we break out into small groups, and there was one specifically for like for families and like making it work. So yeah, med school happens, but I think they're pretty accommodating for if you want to have kids and stuff. Worst case, you can take a year off.
Oh, you can.
You can. It's not encouraged, but if you're gonna have a kid, you know, it's gonna happen. You know, scheduling doesn't exactly work with med school sometimes. Taking a year off is allowed.
Say you don't do well in a class, would you, like, how does that work? Cause like in nursing school, I have a friend that they could only fail 2 classes, and if not, they would get kicked out of the program. How does that work with medical school?
So for medical school, like she talked about before, the first semester is called Foundation. So you take an exam about every 6 weeks, and it covers everything that was learned in the past 6 weeks. So there's not separate classes per se. So in that 6 weeks, you'll learn biochemistry, anatomy, pharmacology, or whatever it is, and take an exam. And then our pass cutoff is a 65 for the first semester. And so and it's all averaged out, so you have 3 exams, so let's say on the first one you didn't do so well, you can kind of like have the opportunity on your second, third exams to bring it up. And then if there's an issue still there, then the faculty works with you to kind of like remediate and figure out how to like better support so that way you can perform better academically. As far as the second semester, we go on an honors grade system, so it's honors, high pass, pass, fail, and the cutoff for pass is now a 70, so it's a little bit higher standards there. And then if you don't do well on an exam, let's say you are below a 70, there's a process for remediation. I think you come in over the summer and you relearn the material and have to take the exam again on that particular subject. So our blocks are typically 4 to 5 weeks, so you'll have to redo that block for.
And as for failing, I think in med school, once you get in, they will drag you to the finish line. So it's not like you fail, get out. It's you fail, sit down with the dean and figure out what's going to work for you. I mean, I think I browsed the like official catalog. Technically, if you like fail, I think 3 times really badly, like you're kicked out. But if you put in the necessary time and effort and utilize the resources they give you, you will make it through.
Yeah, it's a very rare. I haven't heard of anyone that's had to go through a situation like that.
The only people that I've ever heard that drop out do it because they lose their passion for medicine, or it's a really bad like medical issue that they just can't work through.
Y'all have a daycare, like a 24-hour.
We do not at the school, but I don't think the school has a daycare. That being said, we have some couples with like stay-at-home parents, and if anyone here happens to have a kid, feel free to drop them off. They'd be happy to take care of them.
Alrighty, we'll go ahead. One more question. We have room for more questions, so who wants to end this off?
Could have saved me for it earlier. Yeah, I tried it for like 15 minutes.
Or you don't have to have any questions. It's also an option.
Did you enjoy your drive down here to come visit us?
I mean, I make this drive quite often because like my family lives around here, so we didn't run into any horrible.
It wasn't bad. I did like
traffic,
100.
But I feel like
Yeah.
they left the.
You were excited to see us? All right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for
Wait,
coming.
oh, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
It's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know anyone, I'm not saying y'all, but do y'all have friends, like what is their lowest GPA that they got? I don't know if they would share that with y'all though.
At any school.
I heard of someone.
Okay, wait, because we had a dentist come in last week. And he was telling us that he got into dental school with 2.7.
But he got it in 2009 though. That's
So
a decade
now,
ago.
like, 2.7 is like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He was working at NASA.
Yeah, but you know it's not.
So like I'm saying, it's very holistic.
Yeah.
So he had different experiences. He worked as an engineer, so like they're looking at everything. So if you do have a lower NTP, I don't know what the lowest has been.
Yeah.
I feel like low maybe could be like a 3.1, 3.2.
If you all know what the do you guys know what the
MSAR is?
Yeah, that should tell you. I personally, I think I know someone with like in the low 3s. But I mean, there's always people that are outliers and have like exceptional deliveries and have every reason to be in medical school, or they knock their MCAT out of the park.
Right.
So.
Alright. Once again, thank you all so much for staying.